side, painted candy canes on the tree. Santa's on his way, he's filled his sleigh with things for you and for me. It's the time of year when the world falls in love, seems to say Merry Christmas, all your dreams come true. And this song of mine in 3/4 time wishes you and yours the same way too. Where smiles, 'tis the season to care. There are songs to sing, every family's a choir, toys to wrap and bring to the tree. Your own wishing well is not so far from view. Make a wish or two and I promise you Christmas wishes can and do come true. Make a wish or two and I promise you Christmas wishes can and do come true. Thank you.
Most importantly, that's pretty loud. You start to want to ask, like, can you hear that too? Maybe it's just me. Friends, hear these words. Most importantly, love, like it's the only thing you know how at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, all of this means nothing. This page, where you're sitting, your degrees or your jobs or the money that your jobs gave you, nothing even matters except love and human connection. Nothing matters except who you loved and how deeply you were able to love them, how you touched the people around you, and how much you were able to give them. In this cathedral of love and this temple for peace, we know and we honor and respect and we embody that the greatest commandment across all of the wisdom traditions in this world is to love. It's to love. Virtually all of the great paths towards enlightenment are a pathway rooted and bound in love. Love is both intimate and personal, as well as collective and communal. Love seeks out a world of flourishing, and we know that world to be true both within this church and beyond these walls. And we also know that love's greatest manifestation is the human, fully alive, fully human. This morning, in this sacred hour of love that we share with one another, we are being called to reflect on the barriers that keep us from love, not only from loving one another or our neighbor, but also loving ourselves. And so as we light these candles, and we take the light of faith and hope, and we light the candle of love, let its light call us into self-acceptance. Let its warmth caress us and cradle us into an intention in which we are able to offer compassion for one another. And let its energy compel us with courage towards a world in which love dares to take on a life form on this earth that none of us have yet imagined or realized. Well, good morning. Welcome to worship. Welcome to this cathedral of love and this temple for peace where love and justice, liberation, collective experience of the fullness of being, inclusion, belonging, and peace on earth are the shared work of this congregation's liberating faith. My name is Reverend Christopher Rowe. I use he, him pronouns, and I have the pleasure and the responsibility of serving as this congregation's acting senior minister, in this season of love that we're sharing with one another. It is an honor to welcome the many who have made this worship service possible today. We have our guest, Joe Kuilema from Calvin. He'll talk about that. Welcome. We also have Joe DeWinkle at the organ, who is with us today. It's wonderful to welcome him. Thank you, Joe. We also have our choir and Austin, and we also have Rob and Connell leading a trio of wonderful music. Thank you to everyone who has made this time of worship possible together. As I say every week, you have nowhere else to be but here right now. So I hope that you can put away whatever it is that bothers you beyond these walls as we join together in this hour of worship with one another. And in that spirit, I want to invite you into a time of welcoming one another in the peace of love that flows within and among all of us. So, the peace of love is with you. Please turn to your neighbor and welcome them. Thank you. You may be seated. This morning's ancient witness comes to us from the book of 1 John. Hear the words of the ancient spirit as they speak to our contemporary collective this morning. Little children, let us not love in word or speech, but in deed and truth. Our contemporary witness this morning comes to us from the Reverend M. Jade Kaiser. Hear what the spirit of love in our time is saying to the collective whole this morning. We know what love is. We have seen it. We have felt it. Love lives in us, in our collective life together. But we lose touch with it in the noise, in the clanging cymbals and resounding gongs that surround. This noise speaks in hate and bigotry, breaking or hardening our hearts to love. But it learns also how to speak in our languages of love and unity and tolerance and diversity, using so many good words, enticing words, seductive words. They prey on the best of us, speaking to our good intentions, offering words that make unethical choices feel good enough. At least it's something. As if there's no other way, as if we can't do things differently, as if the power of God in us means nothing. Noise is convincing and it is persuading, but it is not love. Without love, it is all just clanging cymbals in our ears, obscuring the wisdom only birthed in silence. It makes it so hard to perceive the voice of God around us or within us. Without love, the feelings within us are silenced. Without love, we move too quickly. We tend to the surface and we miss the roots. Our dreaming becomes narrow and it becomes shallow. Without love, we struggle to speak honestly of our own longings. We don't believe anymore that we deserve to be loved by a better society, to have more time, more peace, less surveillance, less pressure, more justice. We struggle to take the pleas of our neighbor seriously and recognize the flesh in front of us that is sacred, deserving to be loved just for love's sake. But still, this we know, this we profess, this we strive to live by. Everything else will fade like the day's sun. Everything else will turn to dust. Everything built in loyalty to noise will crumble one day. But love never ends. And so we nurture it intentionally, with care, in ourselves, in each other, and in the earth. Through prayer and feasting and weeping together, through mending relationships and tending to histories of violence, breaking the patterns that keep the gongs active, creating spaces to listen together to all that has been silenced within, sifting carefully through what we take in and what we put back out. Whatever else we work to, make love our greatest investment.
It is an honor and a joy to be with you here today. My name is Joe Kuilema. I use he, him pronouns, and I am a visiting professor at Grand Valley State University. I am coming pretty deeply from within the Christian tradition, so that's the vocabulary I'm going to be using here today. But I hope that you know and can sense in your hearts that my greatest commitment is to love and justice together. And that's been true for me ever since I started doing interfaith work in northern Nigeria, fresh out of college with Muslim women. I am committed to love, I'm committed to justice, but I am going to be using the vocabulary that I know because that's how I speak. I'm also an academic, so my standard message is 50 minutes to 3 hours. I'm going to try to keep that in touch. I will say as well that one of the frequent pieces of feedback I get from students is that they leave my classes inspired but also upset. And I'm going to hope to lean a little bit more into the inspired part, but some people may leave here a little more upset than inspired. And if so, I hope you can process that through the week. Because I do think it is impossible to talk about love without talking at least a little bit about harm and hurt. Anything else is superficial. When I first met Christopher last spring at Lantern Cafe, he and I had talked about hope, but there was a mix-up on the date, and Christopher graciously allowed me to talk on the day that worked for me. Perhaps that was a cosmic nudge, as he put it. Perhaps it was a flustered and unorganized first semester academic. I don't know. But I'm here to talk with you about love. I suspect that there is nothing I could say about love that you do not already know. God is love. I could stop there. But as our readings today testify, it really isn't about understanding love perfectly, or academically, or philosophically, or even theologically. It's about actually loving. Love the action, not love the idea. It is about saying yes to love and saying no to that which stands in love's way. Because as M. Jade Kaiser says, and I'm going to lean pretty heavily on that work, we know what love is. We have seen it. We have felt it. Love lives in us in our collective life together. So for me, over the last year, saying yes to love has meant saying no to my religious tradition. If you've been around West Michigan for a while, you've probably already put this together from my Dutch last name and my general appearance as a tall white man. But I was born and raised in the Christian Reformed Church, Christian private schools, Calvin College. My parents met at Calvin. My sisters all went to Calvin. My older sister and I married people who went to Calvin. I was an elder in the Christian Reformed Church. The resume goes on back generations. My great-grandfather ran a Dutch-language Christian newspaper in Kalamazoo. My great-great-grandfather, who was the first to come here, was a personal assistant to Abraham Kuyper. If that name means anything to you, you're too close to that tradition. So to say that these were my people, right? These were my people. Exactly a year ago, and I do think this is the cosmic nudge part, on December 11, last year it was not a Sunday, it was a Saturday, my wife and I were at a Christmas party with some of our closest friends. It was the first time we'd been out in a while, right? It was the pandemic, and we had had twins, premature twins, in July of 2021. So we'd spent most of the fall in a haze of masks and diapers and no sleep. And on December 11, as my semester at Calvin was winding down, we gathered with friends to celebrate the season. We were just confident to leave the house. We left them with some babies, actually 2 babysitters, and we were having a great time. As I think many of you know, and we're still in the pandemic season, but it has been so good to be together again. But in the middle of the night, on my cell phone, I got a call from an administrator. Unusual. They invited me to a meeting Monday morning with a variety of important people. Disconcerting. No additional details. What I knew is that I had officiated a wedding for two dear friends who happened to be in the back corner. I'm not going to make them stand up. It was a queer wedding. In May, I learned I would no longer have a job. Returning again to our reading, we know what love is. We have seen it. We have felt it. But we lose touch with it in the noise. The noise. The noise speaks, as M.J. Kaiser says, in hate and bigotry. The noise can be loud and discordant, the clanging cymbal, the ringing in our ears, the shouts of bigots, the rumble of rubble collapsing under the thud of artillery. But the noise can also be subtle. The noise can mimic the melodies of love. The noise knows how to speak in our languages of love and unity and tolerance and diversity using so many good words. The noise comes with authority. The noise speaks with conviction. The noise urges caution. The noise pours out from the mouths of people we have respected, people we know, people we have loved, and who we believed loved us. But it is not love. Because we know what love is. We do not love in word or speech or even creeds or confessions. We love in deed and truth. Faith without works is dead, and so is love. So as an academic, I always do my homework when I'm coming to a place like this. I read over the whole website because I think part of responding to hospitality is getting to know the other. I'm not actually sure how often this congregation references your core values, but one of them is we value the active practice of love and justice in human relationships, which validate the worth and dignity of each human being. And as I read that, I said, yes, that's exactly right. This is a place where I can feel at home. The active practice of love and justice. I suspect many of you have heard Cornel West say that love is what justice is what love looks like in public, but that implies that justice and love are related, right? And that part of what justice looks like in personal relationships is love. To love someone at a bare minimum is to do right by them, to respect their dignity, their worth, to act justly, to work towards their flourishing and wholeness, to recognize that the flourishing they experience is caught up with your experience of flourishing. So when someone asks you to officiate their wedding, it is a gift, and you do it. If I had said, listen, I believe in my heart that you should be able to get married. I believe that God would smile on your marriage. I love you, but I'm just not in a position. Noise. It's not love. Belief is ultimately cheap. In the Christian tradition, it says in the book of James, even the demons believe. Believing someone deserves love is not love if you never act on it. Supporting even the right politicians and policies is not love if you're never personally willing to stick your neck out for it. The best intentions can be little more than noise because love comes with a cost. Love comes alongside hurt and harm. Love does not always win, at least not in the ways we want it to or on the timetables we want it to. Love is patient. Love endures. As we remember during Advent especially, love draws near to hurt and harm and suffering. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm a social worker, and I'm actually standing right now, and I believe this is true because this looks like it's been here for quite a while, in the same pulpit as one of my great heroes, the social gospel theologian Walter Rauschenbusch. In the 1880s, Rauschenbusch was a Baptist pastor in Hell's Kitchen, New York City, working mostly with immigrants and the poor. Face to face with poverty and xenophobia, presiding over far too many funerals for little children, he became convinced, as I am, that the gospel has to have a social dimension. It couldn't simply be a vertical personal relationship. His most famous book, Christianity and the Social Crisis, was a book that Martin Luther King Jr. said left an indelible imprint on his thinking, giving him a theological basis for the social concern that had already grown up in me. In 1912, he gave a sermon to a conference of social workers. I'm going to read a section of it. The language is 110 years old, so bear with me, and he could be pretty strident. But here's what he said. For ages, the cross of Christ has stood at the center of Christian theology. But many of those who are loudest in their insistence on the cross as the only means of salvation have apparently never had any personal experience of the cross. They do not bear the marks of the Lord Jesus. There are no scars on them anywhere. Their religion has made them respected. All men like them for their goodness. But their goodness was never so good that it waked up the devil. They never antagonized profitable sins, hence they never got hurt. But in that case, they are not as true followers of Christ as they think they are. Social work, the kind that deals with the causes of misery, is today almost the only form of Christian work that involves the risk of persecution. And none who suffers for the cause of truth or justice or for the love of men is an infidel, even if he calls himself so 1,000 times through some sad misuse of the word. So Rauschenbusch, right? Rauschenbusch, of course, was a universalist. And this is why I was never given his work to read during my education. But when I started reading Rauschenbusch in grad school at University of Michigan, I thought, this guy gets it. This guy gets it. I don't like the word infidel, so you'll have to excuse that one, and I have some questions about the devil, but I suspect this is a safe place to admit that. I hope his main point is clear. The call to love is sometimes a call to suffering. It's easy to ignore the root causes of human misery. Evil is profitable. Goodness can be cheap and performative. You have to do the work of love, because the cost of not doing the work is higher. I learned last Monday that a queer student at Redeemer, a Canadian Christian college affiliated with the same denomination as Calvin, died by suicide. Beckett Noble had been an advocate on campus for LGBTQ students. In a final email to administrators, they wrote, "I never thought it would be me who was finally the first to collapse under the weight of everything we go through to try to get a Christian education while embracing who God created us to be." Beckett could not escape the noise. The noise drowned out the melody of love. It could have been different. Because when I stood there and officiated that wedding last year, the melody of love was loud and clear. The dignity and worth of that couple was on display for everyone to see, and it was beautiful. There was no mention of God, but it was one of the most holy moments I have ever had the privilege to be involved in. Because it was love, and we know what love is. And Friday night, my wife and I gathered again with the same group of friends, and it was love, and we gathered and we reflected on everything we had done and all the things we had left behind in the year and we were grateful. And that's our task this season, to sing the melodies of love. For some of us, that may mean finding quiet spaces so that we can hear that melody amidst the noise, because for some of us, as our reading said, we struggle to believe anymore that we deserve to be loved, that we deserve a better society with more peace, more justice. For some of us, it will mean shouting in the streets to drown out the noise, mending relationships and tending to histories of violence, breaking the pattern that keeps the noise in our ears. Whatever it means, this season, do not lose touch with love in the noise. Love each other, love this world, say yes to love, and say no to whatever stands in love's way. Let it begin with us.
Every so often, our speakers reach out and they say, here's a copy of what I'm about to say in case you want to preview it. Joe did that this weekend, and I always respond and I say, I come from a school of preaching and teaching that believes that the sermon is meant to be in this moment, and so I said it has nothing to do with you. Please don't take this the wrong way, but I'm not going to read it. And I'm glad I didn't. Thank you, Joe. Thank you. Friends, when we do this offering, we often talk about how it is yet another form of embodied love. And not just because we can transactionally give money away and say, well, this pays for some love here, but because of how we do it. And that's not uncommon, especially in capitalism. But it is a way in which we can tangibly surrender a piece of ourselves. In this congregation, we have a rich, rich tradition of surrendering our resources in such a way that we entrust them with other organizations or individuals to do more than we even know how, including in Advent when we select a different organization every week that we believe aligns with our core values and our mission and our vision for a more loving and just world, and then we offer those gifts to them. And so today's plate is going to be for a very specific organization yet again. You may recall that 2 weeks ago it went to the Choice Fund. And so this week, on an LGBTQ theme, we will be offering our gifts to a local organization. And I promised I'd practice it, and I'm still probably going to get it incorrect. The Grand Rapids LGBTQ+ Healthcare Consortium. Wonderful. And we actually have someone from there, Jenny, who will be speaking to introduce us to this worthy cause.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Jenny Knight. I'm the Vice President for the Grand Rapids LGBTQ Healthcare Consortium. And this is my business partner, Grace Heisinga, who is the president of the consortium. And we apologize. We know our name is a bit of a mouthful, but we literally looked at every word in that and said it had to have all of them. First, I just want to say thank you, Joseph. That was an amazing talk, and I leaned over to Grace and said, everybody needs to hear this, because one of our goals is to make sure that nobody dies because they're LGBTQ, and that happens every single day.
Thank you, and without individuals and groups such as this one, we wouldn't have the support that we need to do our work. And Jenny's very right. There still remain health disparities in our community here in Grand Rapids, and our mission is to eliminate those health disparities for the LGBTQ plus community. So we do that in a number of different ways. Jenny here is probably one of the best trainers ever, and I'm not saying that because I'm a little biased, but Jenny and Jenny's wife, Jay, do trainings all over, and their trainings focus on the concept of pronouns and how important it is to use the pronouns that somebody is, and how important it is to use the name that somebody is. And we know that it can make a huge difference for all people to be treated in a very respectful, dignified way, and it's connected to health. So that's one of our ways of helping out in the community. We also are very much into data collection and showing that, yes, in fact, there are disparities and the outcomes of what we do are effective.
We have some materials out on the table just outside the bathroom. So we brought in some progressive flags, keychains, and then we also have a flyer out there. We're doing a survey right now of the community, trying to understand where the needs are. So please help us by sharing that information. And thank you for inviting us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You know, it occurs to me, every so often I'll just remember a date of significance. I just realized that it was 12 years ago to this day that I visited Fountain Street Church for the first time. It was December 11th, 2005, and I don't think I did the math right. Oh my God. It was whatever that was in 2005. My friends and I came down here. I wasn't wildly religious at the time, but I was seeking a sense of transcendence. And we went to Grand Valley. It was freshman year. And I was also seeking a space where people of the LGBTQ experience would feel welcome and safe, where you'd feel safe crossing that threshold into this space and worship with one another, worship God or the divine spirit of love. And so as I'm hearing Joe's story this morning, and of course our guests from the Consortium, I'm thinking about how important it is that this church continues to live out and embody this identity as a safe, welcoming, and inclusive place, including through the collection of our gifts this morning. So in that spirit of generosity and love and welcome and love, the offering will now most graciously be received. Thank you. You may be seated. It was 17 years ago today. Oh, the thing is, I had a lovely lunch with Willard Larkin, who I saw earlier this week, and I said to him, yeah, I'm really not great at math, and I had no idea it would be that obvious. Anyway, friends, we have a lot of wonderful announcements to share with you before we part. Goodness. We have, as we did last week, a time of storytelling and hot chocolate and cookies in the Keeler Lounge, and we have Jeff Kempter will be our storyteller today. That should be fun. So please, children, youth of all ages, and hearts of all desires, please join us in the Keeler Lounge for a little time of joy. If that's not your thing, you can go right on into the social hall for the annual Trinkets and Treasures sale. I know many of you have already hit it up. This is a fundraiser that the Women's Association puts on, and we are grateful for the tremendous, tremendous amount of work that went into that with them and anybody else who supported them. Between the broken elevator and crazy schedule of things in the building yesterday, it's amazing that they pulled it off, and they did it with such love and patience and generosity. So please support them. We also have the congregational workshop tomorrow evening here in the social hall at 6 o'clock. This will be a wonderful opportunity to gather as a community once again and go a little deeper with Reverend Jody Betton, as well as the themes we've been talking about. This month, we'll be looking at proximate identity, understanding our identity, which may seem a little familiar because last week I preached on hope and having an importance of a vision with pathways and resources and capacity that can get you there. And so identity is a big part of that. We will also be having dinner served. This time it is from Tamales Mary. It will be a wonderful spread of different things. So if tamales aren't your thing, there will be something for you. It's a wonderful family-owned business here in Grand Rapids that we love to support, as well as an invitation to bring a treat if you wish. Christmas cookies, holiday cookies, something fun, nothing at all, just yourself. Please join us for this workshop. We have even more people signed up this month than last, which is truly a joy to see. Next week is Joy Sunday, a wonderful Sunday. We will have all kinds of music. The choir will be singing. We'll have a soloist from our choir director. We will have Jonathan Tuke back. We will have the handbell ensemble performing. We'll have the cantor from Temple Emmanuel, David Fair, singing some selections. It should be wonderful. So wear your festive best. Maybe throw on some sparkles if you're inspired, and then stick around afterward for the Savory and Sweet celebration in the social hall. Just a wonderful time to come together, connect, and just find and relish joy with one another in this spirit of love we are sharing. And then, of course, I will just jump ahead really quickly to Christmas Eve. It's a Saturday this year, so Saturday evening at 5 o'clock is a service for all ages. I said last week it was in the social hall, but why would I want to be consistent? I've moved it back to the sanctuary, so it's going to be in the sanctuary now. Jonathan Tuke, honestly, part of it was Jonathan agreed to play the organ at the 5 o'clock, so I said, great, then it's in the sanctuary, so thank you, Jonathan. And so that'll be lovely. It'll be a 30 or 40-minute service, lessons, carols, the telling of the ancient stories, carols that are familiar, as well as some poetry and working through the Advent wreath one last time. And then, of course, the 9 o'clock service. All are welcome for that beautiful candlelit service. We'll have a brass quintet under the direction of Ed Clifford. The choir has been preparing beautiful selections for that. Unbelievable readings, both contemporary and ancient, and it should just be a beautiful night to come together and gather in the spirit of peace. It will be our last service in this sanctuary for 2022, and I couldn't think of a better theme to put ourselves in and among on this final Saturday of the year. Goodness. Well, let's say thank you. Thank you to Joe DeWinkle for being on the organ and piano with us this morning. That was wonderful. Thank you. What a gift. Thank you to our dedicated choir, who is a whole group of dozens of ministers in and of themselves, as well as Austin and Margie, who bring their gifts of music and enhance our worship week after week. It's unbelievable. Thank you so much. And our jazz trio. I mean, what a wonderful way to lift our spirits. Thank you. It's good to see you all. And of course, Joe, thank you for your message of love and embodying it in our shared world. Thank you. What a wonderful morning. So as you're blessing this week, we will couple it with my favorite feast day, which I know many of us here are not Catholic, myself included, but there are beautiful stories and messages for all of us in the contemporary world from some of these patron saints. And my favorite one is Our Lady of Guadalupe, who is actually celebrated on December 12th. We've talked about the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe a few times, and so I would like that to be our entree into a poem that will serve as our blessing today. Many of you might be familiar, others not so much, and I'm paraphrasing here, so you can always find some great resources on it, but we are looking at this man, Juan Diego, and he is an indigenous farmer. Ancient language calls him a peasant, but I think he was more dignified and glorified than that. He was this indigenous farmer doing his best in a world, taking care of his family, and he's going about his life. He's living in a world where the Catholic Church, as it was inherited from the colonizers, is very rigid, ornamented. It is patriarchal, hierarchical, oppressive. And he sees this dark, and that matters, dark apparition of a young woman before him who discloses that she's Mary, the Virgin Mother to him. And she invites him into seeing the world as it could be and should be, and knowing that there are glimpses of the divine even for him. And so he's to go to Mexico City and tell the bishop about this. And he goes to Mexico City, and he finds the bishop at the cathedral, and the bishop, of course, is thinking, what are you doing here? You are a peasant, using the ancient language. There is no way that if the Virgin Mother herself were coming here, she would come before you. Go. He sees her again. And he sees her again. And then his uncle falls ill, and so he's avoiding seeing her for a little while because he's been so busy taking care of his uncle and starting to feel like this is getting a little silly and ridiculous. And so he goes out of his way to avoid her on the path he has seen her, and he sees her yet again. And she says, why wouldn't you come to me? I can bring healing to your uncle. I can bring wellness to your world. Go to the top of the hill, and there you will find proof of me. And so he goes to the top of this hill, and again, I'm paraphrasing here. I'm 21st century Fountain Street languaging it for you. And he finds these roses growing there that should not be growing there in December of all seasons, and they don't even grow in this part of the world. And he scoops them up in his tunic, and he takes them with him to see the bishop in Mexico City, who is not that interested in seeing him. And he opens his tunic. These beautiful roses fall to the floor, and Mary's face is in the tunic. Okay. Maybe not something we would believe is happening all the time. Maybe that's not part of our inherited or lived theology, but there are profound messages in this for all of us, especially in this church, especially on this Love Sunday. It's a reminder that the God of love, or love itself, is everywhere and in the least expected places and among the most oppressed and vulnerable among us. But moreover, is a part of the story in which he shows this to the bishop, and the bishop falls to the floor in disbelief. Now you can imagine in the culture of urgency, now they've got to build a chapel for her. But he falls to the floor in disbelief, dropping everything. The power of love this year for me is in something as simple as Juan Diego going to the powers that be and proving the God of love is with him, in that it drops the mitre. You can imagine his hat falling off. You can imagine his golden crozier hitting the floor. The symbols of power are no match for the presence of love. And so as you go forth this week, hear this poem from an unknown author as your invitation to love, wholly and fully in the spirit of Our Lady of Guadalupe. When Juan Diego spread out his tunic, carmine roses cascaded before the bishop, who fell to his knees before the dark virgin, whose image was seared into the rough cloth. When Juan Diego spread out his tunic, his arms embraced his divine mother, Tonantzin, or Mary by her Christian name, her effulgence rapturing the new world with the old. When Juan Diego spread out his tunic, the Trinity became a quaternity. Religion collapsed into spirituality. And a young woman became the symbol of hope for an entire world. When Juan Diego spread out his tunic, a gentle woman for once was in charge and made the bishop drop his mitre and his dogma in all that had been calcified, with a cry of milagro, miracle, God appearing as a young mother, blessing the children east and west. God of the Sistine Chapel, ceiling, fell to the floor to become human and love incarnate among earth. Miracle, God appearing as a young mother, blessing her children east and west, north and south, Juan Diego's open arms offering us the shelter of her presence. For love would be the one that made the earth new. May you go forth this week courageous enough to see the roses that are blooming and springing up from love's soil all around you. May you be courageous enough this week to gather the roses and keep them in your tunic until it is time to tear down the powers and the systems of injustice. May you go forth this week courageous enough to risk love and love one another. I love you. Have a wonderful week.